Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast, joined by Brian Neubert. We want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel, the 811 Bistro, and the Boiler Up Bar for their continuing support of not only our Saturday Simulcast, but GoldandBlack.com and Gold and Black Express. All right, Brian, news out of it appears that Nijel Pack has made a decision. It will not be Purdue, but get us up to date on maybe what that will mean for Purdue down the road, and obviously a guy that Purdue had a lot invested in and ended up not working out.
Yeah, I mean it's I thought he was the guy they needed because I think he's one of the better players in college basketball, exactly what they needed in terms of him being a point guard, him being a really good player, him being an excellent shooter, an excellent scorer, all that kind of stuff. It's just unfortunate for Purdue because they laid out the unequivocally best basketball situation for him. But this is a very unique time in recruiting, obviously. No one should blame any kid for taking a hell of a lot of money. And that's exactly what happened. I expect, if he's not announced already by the time we post this, I expect Nijel Pack to go to Miami. It's not a coincidence that, Miami has been one of the forerunners in the name, image, likeness landscape. The school of Luther Campbell and Nevin Shapiro, probably pretty well mobilized behind the scenes anyway to hit the ground running when it came to actually being able to pay players above the table. And that's exactly what happened. Nijel Pack did exactly what Nijel Pack should have done. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars here, more money than I'll probably see in a decade. And for 2 years of college basketball, it's to end, you get to live in Miami. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to blame him for that. I don't think there's a bad guy here because what Miami did and what Ohio State would have done and what Tennessee would have done here, it's not illegal. It's not legal per se because of the NCAA's two guidelines basically for NIL. One is you can't use it to recruit, and one is you can't use it to retain. Obviously, people are using it to recruit. That is precisely what just happened with Nijel Pack. But that is not law. That is guideline. There is no law. So in the meantime, if somebody comes up to me on the street and offers me $100,000 to shovel my driveway in the winter, you know what? I'll go ahead and take that. And he got a hell of a lot more than $100,000. And good for him, good for his family. Only in America is, the only way to put this. Where Purdue goes from here, they'll recruit other transfers. Other really good transfers will also, have opportunities to go get paid somewhere else. Purdue is not up and running at full capacity in this regard quite yet. What their ceiling in this landscape looks like, I don't know. But this is going to be an issue with the next guy too. If the next guy is a coveted enough player to have the sort of options Nijel Pack had, this will be an issue with any number of kids here. So I don't know where Purdue. I know Purdue's in on some other guys. There's still some good transfers out there. Whether Purdue can get them in this current climate, I do not know. I do know they can get Eric Hunter. He's in the transfer portal, but he has expressed interest before in, coming back and playing another year of college basketball. Purdue could welcome him back. And I don't think they could have had they got Nijel Pack. I think that was a one or the other type of deal. Now that you've not gotten Nijel Pack, I think there's a conversation to be had there. And I mean, if that's your plan B, if your plan B or your plan C, whatever it might be, is bringing back a starter off a 29-win team last year and your best perimeter defensive player on a team that has to get better defensively, that's not the worst option in the world. And so I think Purdue has a little bit of a golden parachute here in terms of Eric Hunter. So that's something to watch. But obviously, Purdue wanted Nijel Pack badly. They had a lot invested in him. They again laid out the most airtight basketball argument for him or situation for him, and any other year, any other recruiting landscape than the one that's going on right now, Nigel Pack is coming to Purdue. I'd say with 99.5% certainty that Nigel Pack is choosing Purdue over Miami. But that's not the reality right now. This is a situation where a school can pay a kid hundreds of thousands of dollars, enough to pay for, I don't know how much a four-year scholarship costs at the University of Miami. I know the University of Miami is a really good academic school. I assume it's expensive.
$70,000 a year.
$70,000 a year
for room and board. Yeah, probably
okay.
About. Yeah.
Okay. He just got the equivalent of a four-year college scholarship to play 2 years of college basketball at the University of Miami. If my information is correct, think about that for a second. It was like a year ago that we were sitting here debating a scholarship should be enough for these guys. Do you know how much this is worth? And people like me were saying, well, do you know how much they're worth to the school? That argument has been nuked. It has not just been thrown out the window. It has been stepped on. It has been stuffed down the garbage disposal, because you are now finding out what athletes are worth to these schools. Because you are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars here. Kofi Coburn could have gone back to Illinois and gotten $1 million, if I understand things correctly, and I think I do. $1 million to play one more year at the University of Illinois. It's Oscar Tshiebwe going back to Kentucky. It's been reported that he's got a situation where this is a $2 million deal for him. And all of that stuff has to come overseas because he's an international kid, does not have a work visa in the United States, so he can't make that money here. So whatever was arranged for him, he had to go back to his native country to do. I'm sure there's a lot of Kentucky people overseas there that, kind of took care of him. This is just an unbelievable time. This is just, it is like a science fiction novel for those of us who followed college basketball for a long period of time. But it is what it is right now. And we'll find out over the next couple of months and years if this is something that's going to endure, if the market's going to correct itself, if the NCAA as we know it is going to collapse under the weight of this, which would be nothing but the NCAA's fault, because the NCAA had a generation to get out in front of this, to prepare for this day, instead of fighting this at every turn and blowing all their money fighting things in court. They could have just been proactive about this. They could have just planned for it, prepared for it, welcomed it when everyone knew it was coming, before the government had to force their hand. And had they done that, there might have been some rules. There might have been some regulations. There are none, at least none that are enforceable, none that aren't being laughed at. And it kind of is what it is. We're going to find out here in the next couple of months whether the NCAA is going to continue on as it has continued on for all of our lives, or if they're going to, it's going to become something that is even more of a little sister to Power 5 football, and to a lesser extent high major basketball. But right now it is nothing short of a bidding war for players. Not every kid, obviously. It's not going to be. It's not this scorched earth where everything has changed on every kid, but it has changed enough to where this is just kind of burned beyond recognition.
Yeah, you look at where Purdue sits in the marketplace, and you've talked a lot about the fact that that Purdue is in a situation where it doesn't have the infrastructure for paying players in place, and how big a factor that is. Do you see that? Is it too early to tell, I guess, and how this is all going to shake out?
Well, I'm sure they're behind from an infrastructure perspective, but I'm sure a lot of people are. I think when you look at some of the teams that have been really formidable in this NIL era, Texas A&M football, okay, Miami in general, as I said before, the school of Luther Campbell and Nevin Shapiro, Tennessee. You're dealing with a lot of schools who have long histories of doing whatever it takes to get players, and chances are that there was probably some sort of shall we say, loose infrastructure in place already amidst their boosters to, be ready for this. And they were, and they are all going to have an advantage now. I think in this current landscape, I think Purdue is behind too, in terms of the simple fact that Purdue has never been that place that has done whatever it takes to win. Whatever it takes to win. I know Purdue has some NCAA baggage in its history.
Not a lot of it, but yeah.
I think in its modern history, I think, this has been a place where it's probably about as clean as you would find in high major basketball, at least. There have been no red flags about football, anything like that. And I think places like that, you sort of have to rewire yourself to play the game, at a lower common denominator. And when I say that, I can't say a lower common denominator because none of this stuff is illegal right now. It violates the only guidelines the NCAA has put out in a lot of ways. But at the same time, if you're driving down the highway and you're driving 100 miles an hour, but there are no speed limit signs, are you speeding?
Yeah.
If there are no rules, explicit rules to break, how is anyone violating any rules? Nothing that's happening right now is illegal because there is no legal. There is no illegal. There is just everything that happens. And as I said before, you can't blame the kid. I mean, if somebody offers me $400,000, to go play 2 years or however much it was. I shouldn't quote numbers when I don't know for a fact. Take the money. I mean, even if you don't need the money, wealthy people do not get or stay wealthy by turning down money. That's just the reality of it. And these players have worked themselves into positions where they can take advantage of this very unique situation. Great, go do it. Can't blame them. Can't blame the people for paying them because you might question the absurd market they're setting with the numbers that are being thrown around, or question how much this can be sustainable in terms of spending these sums of money for this, and this in terms of the actual outcomes. But you can't blame anybody involved here other than the NCAA for not being ready for this and not having any sort of infrastructure in place. And the NCAA is the presidents. It is not Mark Emmert. It is the university presidents. If they didn't want to deal with this for a generation, didn't want to deal with the inevitable employment issue, didn't want to deal with the inevitable unionization issue, so they fought and fought and fought anything that would require that they share some measure of money, or they tear down the amateurism model that has allowed them to keep all the money for themselves for so long. So now when the governments force their hand on name, image, likeness, they're not ready for it. That they don't have any plan for it. They don't have any apparent interest in policing it. And had they, things would be very different, but they didn't. So here they are. So now we're going to find out whether, the NCAA endures or the NCAA, crumbles under its own weight. And this is all stuff I was saying on Thursday before I knew that Nijel Pack was going to Miami. I mean, this has all been plain as day to see to anybody who's seeing straight.
Yeah. All right. Still have recruiting to talk about, and you're going to obviously have the opportunity to go to this weekend, and a lot going on in AAU basketball. You got a little bit of football. Tell us a little bit about that, and a chance to see some Purdue commits heading into the next several years. So tell us about that. Purdue has Draven Gibbs-Lawhorn committed. The kid is from Lafayette. He's been committed to Purdue for some time. I've seen him play one AAU game in my life, I should say. So I'll see him 4 times this weekend. I'll see him another half dozen times probably next weekend. So I think that'll make some really good subject matter on our site, both video and the like, and just
sharing what I see with our readers. That'll be, I think, interesting. And then on Sunday, there's Arrivals.com football camp at Ben Davis. Hopefully there's a bunch of Purdue targets there. I only know of like 2 right now, Dylan Thieneman, and there's a wide receiver from Chicago, Purdue's recruiting, but hopefully a bunch of guys are there. So I'll have some good football stuff, hopefully, as well. But it's an interesting summer for Purdue because, the transfer cycle really has dominated it in the short term. If Purdue gets a multi-year transfer, now they're out of 2023 scholarships for the time being. Obviously, things can change. Things probably will change. They're actually over. But I think the presumption that Zach-Edey, who just announced he's coming back for his junior year, probably won't make it to his senior year, gets you back to even. So really, it's Purdue's recruiting transfers and then Purdue's recruiting underclassmen. The only really 2023 target I'm aware of that they're locked into is Xavier Booker from Indianapolis. So they'll follow him. They'll recruit him. I'm sure they would take a commitment, even if they don't have a scholarship on paper right now. But we'll see what they do in terms of bringing him in for a visit, things like that. So it's sort of a weird summer. People are going to be really challenged to keep their scholarship number straight and planning. For things in recruiting nowadays, because you're going to lose guys, but you're also going to have these staggered recruiting classes where you're bringing in a 4-year guy with a 3-year guy with a 2-year guy, and then you're going to have 1-year guys sprinkled in here and there. And it's just going to be this big puzzle that has to get put together every year. So coaches' abilities to plan, I think years out, in this environment, it's going to be really difficult. But Purdue's just going to keep recruiting good players and figure it out from there.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that story and much more on the site NFL Draft. So next week, Purdue will have at least 2 guys that will be picked. Of course, George Karlaftis has the opportunity to be one of Purdue's highest picks in a long, long time. That'll be next Thursday as well. So, all right, Brian, we'll let you get back to work, and we appreciate your expertise and everything that you're bringing to the table on Purdue recruiting and obviously Purdue basketball and football. I want to thank our sponsor, Union Club Hotel, 811 Bistro, Boiler Up Bar, for their support of us, and GoldandBlack.com and this simulcast. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week on the Saturday Simulcast. There'll be this and much more on the site this week. Have a great week, everybody.